including 9.
I have never been a runner, but for the past few months, I've been trying to change that. For most of my life, running always seemed like a punishment. Whether it was dropping a pass in football or losing a one-on-one in lacrosse, 9 times out of 10, the result was running a lap. Because of that, I've always associated running with pain and punishment. I've never had an issue with running when it's in the context of sport, but the thought of just going out and running 5 miles sounds awful to me. Since college, my main source of exercise has been weightlifting, and I've severely neglected any sort of cardiovascular exercise. I think the psychological association between punishment and running is the reason I've never really enjoyed it. But at the beginning of this year, I decided to pay a little bit more attention to my cardiovascular health. I mean, I have a degree in kinesiology. I know how important both cardio and resistance training are for your health. So there's really no good reason for me to be avoiding cardio. Even if I didn't like it, I should be doing it for my own health. So when I came back to school after winter break in the new year, I started super slow, just walking maybe 20 minutes after I lifted. That went on for a few months and I would slowly add some running, but never more than like 2 or 3 miles. But at some point, I set a goal to run a 10K by July. A 10K is around 6.2 miles. I've ran that far one time in my life. And then it was actually because of a class I took in college. With being a kinesiology major, we had to take certain sport classes, and I think it was the summer between my junior and senior year, I took a jogging class, and you could either pick to train for a 5K or a 10K. I've ran a 5K before, so I challenged myself and did the 10K program. So over the course of 6 weeks, I worked my way up, and on the last day of class, I ran a 10K. And since then, I hadn't ran probably more than 3 miles. So since that was sort of my previous max distance, I thought it would be a good goal to work back up to that. Over spring break, I went on a run around my neighborhood. Maybe I was bored because we weren't in school or it was just a really nice day, but for whatever reason, I decided that I was gonna run the 10K that day. The last few miles were a grind. I was going pretty slow, but I finished, which means I finished the goal that I set for myself a few months early. So I set another goal. This time it was gonna be to run 10 miles before August. Funny enough, when I told my girlfriend this, she let me know that there was a 10-mile race near her hometown back in Rhode Island on July 30th. So I planned on running that and started to train. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to run the race. They closed registration early because of how hot it was going to be that day, and I didn't sign up in time. I was pretty upset about not being able to run it. I mean, I trained for like 6 weeks to meet this goal, and I felt pretty good about it. So as soon as I found out I wasn't going to be able to run the race, I started Googling 10-mile races near me. After searching through a bunch of websites, I saw that there was going to be a half marathon in DC in the middle of September, which was a week before my birthday. So this was great. I could go back home, see friends and family, and go run a half marathon. So, somewhat impulsively, I signed up for it. At the time of signing up, I had about 8 weeks until race day. I already had a solid base for my 10-mile race prep, but I needed to find a new training plan. I took a 12-week training plan that I found online and modified it down to be 8 weeks, which pretty much meant I cut out the first 4 weeks since I already had that base. So, here's my training plan. I have about 4 weeks until race day, which is why about half of it is already highlighted green. Those are the days that I've already completed. You'll see I love color coding, so I have all my different types of runs highlighted in a different color. My training runs make up the largest proportion of them. They are a pretty easy effort and make up the base of my training. I have tempo runs, which are at a faster pace than the training runs, but it's also a shorter distance. These are to get my body used to running a little bit faster for a few miles at a time. I also mix in some track work here and there to work on my top end speed. And finally, I have my weekly long run, which is kind of self-explanatory. These are the slowest runs I do, and it's just to get my body used to moving for an extended period of time. As you can see, I'm still making lifting a priority. Lifting has always been really important to me, and I love doing it, so I didn't want running to take away from my strength training. And honestly, the two work synergistically if you're smart about it, which is why I'm still lifting 4 days a week. Strength training is really important for injury prevention and just building your speed. So while it's been really time consuming to keep up with it, I think it's really important. Having everything mapped out like this in a specific plan has been really helpful for me. If I didn't, it would be a lot easier to skip days or push things off. But now I don't even have to think about what I have to do that day. It's already mapped out for me, so I just have to go do it.
All right, so I just pulled up to a track that is by my house. I think it's a track for one of the local high schools around here, but I've never really seen them practicing here. It is used by a lot of people, and this is where we'll do track workouts for our running club for my school. Today I have a track workout, which is why I'm at the track. It was raining earlier, but it seemed to clear up. It's still super overcast, which is actually kind of nice. I don't think the track is going to be wet, so kind of perfect weather for some speed work. I try to do a track workout like once a week usually. Sometimes I'll skip it, but just do more of like a higher effort, normal, just like road run. But I've been enjoying the track work. It's something that I've never really done before. I never ran track in high school or anything like that. So the few times I've been here with our running club, I've really enjoyed. It's nice to do those workouts with my classmates, but today I'm just alone. Speed work is really important even for a long distance thing like a half marathon, because even though I'm not going to be running this fast during the half marathon, if you want to get faster, you have to run fast. Usually on track days, I'll either do 400s or 800s, which is 1 or 2 laps around the track, a pretty maximal effort, basically just running as fast as I can for that distance. And then after that effort, I will either walk or jog half that distance. So when you get a little bit more serious about running, you can try to like have a certain pace that you're trying to hit on each of your efforts, like trying to do a 6-minute mile pace for an 800, all that kind of stuff. I'm not really worrying about that. Since I'm still sort of a beginner, I just want to get my body used to running at faster speeds. So today's workout is going to be 400s. I'm planning on doing like 6, and we'll just kind of see how I feel. If I want to do more, then I'll keep going, but I think at least 6. Thankfully, the weather is pretty nice, so hopefully I won't get too fatigued too early. And we'll just see how that goes. Alright, so that was fun. So I did 6 400s, like I said. I did a 800-meter warm-up and a lot of like dynamic stretching. Making sure my joints were ready for a high-intensity workout. Then did the 400s. My first 2 were a little slower just because I was easing into things. My third one was my fastest, which I definitely felt like it was going to be my fastest while I was running it. So that was great. It ended up being a 1:22, which I assume is probably the fastest that I've ever ran a lap around the track. I've only been doing track work and like really training for like 5 or 6 weeks. So this is only like the second time I've actually ran 400s, but pretty happy with it. After my last one, I thought I was gonna die. My heart was beating so fast. I had to cut my cool down short just because I was like, all right, I just need to walk and be done. But all in all, it was pretty good. I definitely prefer 400s to 800s. I've always been like a shorter distance kind of person, even though I'm training for a half marathon, trying to challenge myself and do something a little different. But honestly, I think that 800s might be a little bit better for the kind of race that I'm training for. So I think my speed sessions from here on out, I'll probably try to do 800s.
Alright, so I just got done with the 7-mile run, and I wanted to talk about some things that I've learned since I started seriously training a few months ago. With researching how to train for a long distance run, I realized I always went about running in the wrong way. Well, it wasn't really wrong, but it makes sense why I didn't enjoy it that much. I thought when you went for a run, you had to be breathing heavy and barely able to speak for it to count. The more I looked into how to train, I realized that people kept talking about this 80-20 rule. There's a bunch of 80-20 rules out there, but when it's applied to running, basically means that 80% of your training should be spent at a slow, easy pace, and then the rest can be higher intensity stuff like track work or tempo runs. Now, you can just use your judgment to decide if a run is easy or hard. There's a scale used in exercise called RPE, or rate of perceived exertion. It's either on a 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 scale, with the higher number being like an all-out max effort and 1 being fairly easy. I like using the 10-point scale, so when I'm looking at my training, all of my easy runs are going to be in the 2 to 3 range, and then my harder stuff is going to be like 7 to 10. Now, this is the simplest way to categorize your training, but what a lot of people do is they use heart rate training to be a little bit more accurate. There's a few different heart rate models, but the most well-known is a 5-zone model, with zone 1 being the easiest, zone 5 being the hardest, and they're all based on a percentage of your heart rate. Most of the advice will tell you that 80% easy run should all be done in zone 2, which is around 60 to 70% of your max heart rate. That means that most of your training should be at a pretty low intensity, which was a huge surprise to me. The 80-20 rule is such a widespread theory for good reason. A significant portion of exercise research shows that you get the best adaptations or results when you're following this 80-20 rule. And since I've started incorporating this into my training, I've seen some pretty big improvements. If I compare the run I just did to one I did a few months ago, it's pretty crazy to see the difference. So this was a run that I did when I was training for my 10-mile run. It was 7 miles at a 9:28 pace, and my heart rate was 171. So if I'm using the 5-zone model, that means that my average heart rate was in zone 4, which is not great for a long run. Then today, my pace was 9:46, which is slower, but my heart rate was at 143. So that is a pretty huge difference. So that means my average heart rate was almost 30 beats a minute slower today. And aside from just the number differences, my body felt completely different. I was struggling hard to keep up that 9:28 pace back in July, but today was easy. I felt great, and I could have kept going for 5 more miles probably. Like anything, progress in running takes a while to see. You need to put in a lot of time before your body starts making any significant adaptations. But once it does, it feels great. As I've started to improve, it's just motivated me more, which is perfect as I approach race day.
Alright, so it is Sunday, which means I have my long run of the week. Today is 10 miles. It'll be the longest run I've ever done, and the longest run that I will do for all of this prep. Last week I had 9 miles and it was fine, so I'm not too worried about today, but it'll be sort of the last test before the half marathon, because next week my long run is only going to be 7. It's pretty typical to not sort of run the full distance of your race for training. I think for marathon prep, it's pretty common to do like a 20-mile long run as your longest run in your prep. And in the plan that I'm following, wants me to do a 10-mile run for a half marathon. So shouldn't be too bad. It is a very cool morning, which is perfect. I haven't had too much to eat today. Just had a kiwi and a little bit of honey, because I'm someone who does not like to run on a full stomach. I feel like I'm gonna puke the whole time if I do that. Just had those 2 things, a little bit of water, and then my roommate gave me one of his gel packs for fueling along the race. That's something that's really important too, is if you're running a long distance, you wanna be making sure that you're taking in energy along the way, because you're burning a lot of energy. Typically, you're gonna want it to be just straight up carbohydrates. So he gave me this Cliff gel pack. It's 100 calories, 25 grams of carbs, which is like perfect. This one also has a little bit of caffeine in there, which is great for me because I haven't had any caffeine today, which is kind of unlike me. I'll probably have this about halfway through the run. During my actual race, I'll probably want to bring like 2 of these or some sort of energy. I mean, sometimes I'll literally just use candy, so I might be doing that for the race. We'll see what I end up doing. But yeah, the goal for today, just finish the 10 miles. Going to be going at a very slow pace, which is sort of the point of long runs. But you want to keep your heart rate low, keep the effort low, because you don't want to burn out. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll check in after. Alright, so it actually went very well. Started off really slow, as I always try to. I try to have my first mile kind of be my slowest just to ease into things. And my heart rate was very low. It was in like the 120s. So I was like, alright, I can pick up the pace a little bit. And kind of progressively just kept getting faster every mile. My last few miles were kind of in the low 10 minutes. I think overall my pace was like a 10:16, which is perfect for a long run. My heart rate was 147. So right where I want to be, in that zone 2 range. Legs feel pretty good. Have a little bit of hip pain, but that's not that bad. I had the gel about halfway through, right around mile 4, and it was pretty hard to get down. I've heard people say that they're pretty thick and you should use water to get them down. I don't have like a small portable running water bottle, so I just did it dry, and it was very thick, but it was good, tasted fine for what it's for. So yeah, definitely gonna look into trying to get some for myself. Maybe something that's a little easier to get down without water, because I don't really feel like buying a water bottle at this point. Maybe if I continue to run, that's something that I'll invest in, but that's not something that I'm gonna get at this moment. So yeah, all in all, it felt good. I definitely feel like I could have done 13.1 at that pace. I'm definitely gonna be running faster on the race day, but it just felt good to be like, all right, I can definitely go that distance at this pace. The question is just gonna be trying to find the sweet spot for race day, running fast, but making sure I'm not burning out.
So, let's talk about race day. Start time was at 7 a.m. I live about 30 minutes from DC, so I got up at 4:30 to eat something, get some fluids in me, and drive into DC. I wanted to get up as early as possible, 1, to make sure I got there on time, but 2, just to make sure my body was fully awake before I started the race. I had to park kind of far away from the start line, but honestly it was pretty nice to walk through DC at that hour. The sun was rising. Pretty much the only people out were people going to the race, and the sights were just beautiful. It was also perfect weather, sunny, 60 degrees, so I could not have asked for a better race day. Going into race day, I got advice from one of the doctors that I work with to not be worried about any sort of goal time. Especially since it was my first one, my only goal should just be to finish. I started the race at a 9:30 pace, which was pretty comfortable for me. I thought I could sustain that for the whole race. A few miles in, I felt pretty good, so I started to speed up a little. Everyone always says that you'll run faster on race day than you expect, just because of the race day adrenaline, and I definitely experienced that. I kept running faster every single mile, and by mile 6, I was in an 8:45 pace. This was pretty close to where I would do my tempo run, so I knew I could sustain this for like 3 miles, but I had 7 miles left in the race. They had water stations like every other mile, so I always made sure to get some since I wasn't running with a water bottle. I also used candy to fuel during the race, and I ate some every like 30 or 40 minutes. The course that we ran around DC was absolutely gorgeous. It was right along the water for like 3/4 of the race, and then the rest of it was through a very scenic highway that goes through the woods. So I think the environment too was another reason I was feeling good and running fast. As I got to the 9-mile mark, I saw a little sign ahead of me that was being held up by one of the runners that said 2 hours. I didn't know this at the time, but apparently these races have volunteer runners that will run at a specific pace and hold a sign for anyone who wants to hit that time. So that meant the 2-hour time group was right ahead of me. I was still feeling pretty good, no leg pain, breathing was fine. So even though I didn't set out with a specific time in mind, I made the decision to pass that 2-hour group. So I continued to pick up the pace and pass them around the 10th mile. At that point, I was super happy to be under 2 hours, but I still felt really good and thought I could push it harder for the last 2 miles. So after I passed the 11-mile mark, I went all out. My last 2 miles were 8:08 and 7:53. It was really hard to maintain that pace, especially in the last half mile, but as soon as I heard the cheers from the finish line, I caught a second or third wind that got me across the line. The first time my legs hurt all day was as soon as I stopped moving. I crossed the line and bent over a railing to catch my breath, and my legs just locked up. I've never felt that kind of pain before, and it was super hard to just take one small step. They were giving out water and snacks, so I found Mackenzie, got something in me, and then started to hobble back to my car. It took a while, but it was nice to walk back through that beautiful part of DC. Once I got to my car, I met up with my friend Noah, who came into DC to show some support. Then I went home to hang out with my family and eat a lot of food. My final time was 1 hour, 56 minutes, and 11 seconds. I'm super happy with that time for my first half marathon, and I really enjoyed the experience. Maybe I'm biased because I'm from around DC, but I really can't imagine a better course to run. A lot of family and friends have asked me if I'm gonna run another half marathon, and I tell them that I already am. A few weeks after signing up for the DC one, I signed up for the Philadelphia half marathon, which is in November. Signing up for my second half marathon before I'd even run my first, once again, was probably an impulsive decision. But one of the big reasons I decided to do it is because a huge group of students from my school are also running it. Created a group for the race to raise money for cancer research. Seemed like a good thing to do with us being medical students. So if you're interested in supporting cancer research, please donate to our group. The link is down in the description. I have 9 weeks left until the Philly Half Marathon, and I haven't decided yet if I'm gonna try to improve my time or just run it with my friend Ryan because it's his first one. Either way, it's gonna be a great time and I'm excited to keep running. Alright, well that is gonna do it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like below and subscribe if you want to see videos like this in the future. Thanks, and I will see you in the next one.